Welcome to the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast, offering tips, insights, and advice from the best in the publishing industry.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of All Things Book Marketing. I'm your host, Olivia McCoy, and in our open book episode today, we have Shannon Donaghy, who is our book publicist on the arts and entertainment team, as well as our social media strategist. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for joining us. We actually recorded an episode in January of 2023. And then by the time I got around to publishing it, so much had changed that we had to come back and re-record it. So thank you for joining me again.
Of course, I'm happy to.
But this is going to be a fun one because we're going to talk about young professionals entering the publishing space. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your journey into publishing, because you had a really unique one in starting the intern to publicist pathway here at Smith.
Yes, some might call me a pioneer.
Pioneer. There you go.
Yes, that's one word for it. I started here as an intern in the summer of 2019, I think, and worked pretty much an entire year as an intern here. And at that point, Smith was at the beginning of some big growth and looking to create new entry-level roles. And my first full-time role was one that was kind of experimented with before that, never really went anywhere. It didn't really find its feet, but they thought that I might be a good fit. I weaseled my way in there, and it ended up working out really well. I think that, we'll get into some of the ways that I made myself valuable and found value in what we were doing and elevated the role to be what it is today. But after that, I can be credited with creating a second entry-level role before jumping up to full-time publicist, which is where I'm at today. So it's been quite a journey, a lot of paving the way and growing pains that go along with that kind of thing. But it's been really rewarding as well, especially seeing now new people coming into that entry-level space and occupying the places that I created, really. So,
and was Smith your first internship in the publishing space or in general?
No, technically no, in the publishing space. I did take an internship, I guess kind of at the same time as Smith, but a little bit before, where I did travel writing for a travel publication. I actually paid to do that internship. I traveled to Iceland for that and wrote an entire section of a travel book, which was really cool.
Wow.
So Smith was technically my second in the publishing industry. I think those two kind of at the same time were my first internships. But yeah, that was those two were my first foray into the publishing space as a professional.
Sounds about right. I had lots of internships before I started as full-time as well. What was your university degree, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, of course. I graduated from Montclair State University with a bachelor's in English. I had a concentration in creative writing, which at Montclair, the creative writing concentration, you can choose a genre or you can just do plain creative writing. I kind of unofficially chose poetry. You had to take 3 poetry classes to have that focus. I think I took 3, but ended up keeping my concentration plain. But then I also have a minor degree in public and professional writing, which I think
comes in handy.
I've used literally every day of my life since. And if that was a major option, which I think it is now a major at Montclair, if you are planning to go to Montclair and want to get into publishing, highly recommend that path. If it had been a major at the time, I definitely would have done that over English for sure.
I graduated from University of Georgia with a double degree in English and French with an emphasis in poetry.
Nice.
So we have that in common. And I just think it's interesting to note that while we have a degree in English, we didn't become editors, because I think a lot of young professionals that I talk to think that editor is the publishing job.
Yeah.
But it's one role within the whole industry of I don't know, dozens and dozens of different responsibilities and jobs that you
and
go
growing
into.
and counting.
And counting.
As I can attest to.
Did you want to be an editor?
I did actually. It's so funny. I think it's probably like the rom-com job that all of the protagonists have in the movies. So that's certainly where that romanticization comes from. This English degree, and I can't pronounce words correctly. It's fine. But yeah, I did want to be an editor. And I think that's why I gravitated towards that Iceland internship. Part of that was editing. The main part was writing. But I did actually help with quite a bit of editing as well. But I ended up on publicity, answering the question you didn't ask, but
I was about to.
Yeah.
So
And with publicity, it was kind of a strange happenstance where I was kind of between an editorial internship and the internship at Smith. The editorial internship was with like a textbook company, and I really wanted to be in the fiction space and do things that were a little more creative and things that I enjoyed more. I didn't really want to do much technical writing in that sense, but I was kind of hemming and hawing because I thought that I wanted to be an editor, and that would have been like direct editing experience. I didn't know that much about publicity, except what I did know was two of my roommates in college were in communications and focusing on publicity. Shout out to Sandra if you're listening. She is now in corporate communications. I saw that as something that I didn't really want. And then my other roommate was in crisis at the time, which is absolutely not what I wanted. That was kind of my frame of reference for publicity. And so I talked to, I think it was Marissa that I talked to at Smith when I was kind of vetting for this internship. And it just seemed more up my alley than the other internship. You know, the topics and books and authors that we work with seemed a lot more in line with what I was looking at. And I ended up choosing Smith because it seemed like a really good networking and learning opportunity, and ended up falling in love with publicity in the way that we do it in the book world. And that's kind of how I've ended up here and stayed here. So long and winding journey.
That's a common path that I hear about, though, especially with younger professionals, in that they come in wanting to be a writer or an editor, and then they somehow end up in a different field within publishing. I also wanted to be an editor, and I've talked about my pathway several times on this podcast, but I actually did a writing internship in college. I didn't pay for it, but I didn't get paid for it, but that's okay. And then I got an editorial internship at an independent publisher back where I lived at the time. And on my first day, I came in and they were like, oh yeah, paperwork assigned, you're good to go. Here's a quick little test to see where your editing capabilities are. And I panicked really hard, and like all English majors suddenly forgot how to spell university. And it was like a whole thing. And they were like, oh, you know, I think PR downstairs could use some help if you have a minute and you want to try that out. And I kind of fell into it and fell in love. And it's been ever since then. I went from that internship straight into an entry-level role with a different indie publisher, and then went back to school, got a different degree, came back, and now I'm here at Smith. So I do hear it often, though, that anyone that ends up in marketing, book PR, distribution, agency, all of those different jobs, design even, have come from wanting to be an editor or degrees in English editorial.
Definitely. I don't know if that's just a symptom of not knowing much about the industry when you start. You know, that again, it's the glamorized piece of the industry, is getting into the nitty-gritty of the book, and it's all about the book, and the early discovery of that is really exciting. But I mean, the more I learned about the industry, the more I realized that there were, like you said, so many pieces of it and so many different things to explore. And I really do think, you know, publicity is kind of the last thing, and marketing too, the last thing people think about, especially in terms of the production timeline. But I think it's exciting in a different way. You're not necessarily discovering the next novel you're publishing, but you're helping other people discover it, and that is exciting in its own way, for sure.
We're going to talk about mentorship in a second, but something that I talk about a lot in my mentorships that I do is how much editing there is in marketing and publicity. And so let's balance the scales a little bit and let's romanticize book marketing and publicity.
Yeah.
What were some of your responsibilities as an intern and how have those evolved as you climbed the ladder here at Smith?
Great question. I did do a lot of writing up front, a lot of writing press releases. That was a format I learned in college in my public and professional minor, but definitely one that I learned more about here. So that was a big thing, writing and being edited. I think getting that criticism and adjusting what I was learning was something that I did a lot. I also wrote a couple of pitches. I did a lot of research. That was
a lot of
biggest thing.
We love our research.
We do.
Super sleuthing.
Could find anyone's email right now if you ask me to. I did a lot of organization too. I organized reports and helped communicate things, not necessarily directly to the client, but helped our publicists organize their communications to the clients to make it really streamlined. All of that is things that I love doing and was really exciting. I also think for me, getting to write press releases, and pitches too, that is where you can be creative in publicity. Marketing, I think it's the same way, where you're kind of finagling your brain around what is going to catch other people's attention, what's going to be exciting in the market. Books and authors have their core message that they obviously it's their baby and they want to put out into the world, but it's our job to make sure that that happens accurately and we reach the right people. And I always find that really fun, trying to figure out the right angle to excite other people and get them as interested in the book as, of course, we are.
I mentioned it in the episode with Nicole Watkins, agency versus publishing models. We talked a little bit about how my experience marketing with a publisher was a lot more working with other departments at that publisher to make sure from the production point that the book had the right messaging. Whereas I feel like here at Smith, the agency model, it's a lot of massaging that messaging that they have for the book for specific people and audiences.
Definitely.
But there are times in consulting that we're able to jump in and help with book description too.
Definitely. Yeah. I think finding those niches are it's kind of our bread and butter here. Everyone wants to say that their book is for everyone, but that's not necessarily the case.
Your book is for everyone. Your book is for no one.
Yes, exactly. So honing those audiences after the fact can be interesting. Having that extra lead time to do it is what we love. We love that. More of that, more lead time.
And what do your responsibilities look like today?
Great question. My day-to-day today is really fluid and can be as flexible as it needs to be. I do a lot of pitching, of course. I do a mix of publicity and consulting. And so, pitching is going to be in the publicity space, of course. I love doing that kind of work. I also love the consulting side of things where we're working on an author's brand. I do a lot of work in the social media space, obviously. So that comes in handy with the consulting stuff. I also, of course, run our Smith Instagram, and that is a daily activity I do, scrolling and liking and posting and strategizing with you about what to post and what direction we want to go in. And I also do my best to be accessible in the office to anyone who has questions, specifically the people who are now in the roles that I helped create. I love doing that kind of stuff, whether it be teaching or answering one quick question or helping write an email or whatever the case may be. I love, just guiding and encouraging people, because it's just really exciting. And I loved that kind of thing when I was starting, having someone there to support and also give me the room to do new exciting things. That's something I really love, is having that creative freedom.
That's one of my favorite things about publishing in general, is that it's just full of genuinely kind people who want to help and educate, not just author education, which is my favorite part of the job, but also each other. I know when I was starting out, I was I had a never ending line of people trying to give me advice, and I welcomed all of it. And I actually reached out and did a lot of informational interviews with people at different points in publishing just to figure out, do I want to work independent? Do I want to do traditional or agency? Do I want to stay in marketing, or do I want to go to PR, or do I want to try doing distribution? And then asking people at your internship, at your job, what does it look like if I continue here at this company? And everyone's always so excited to answer your questions and give you their feedback and their thoughts and genuinely help you with your career.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception about the industry, is that, it's very type A and competitive and people stepping on top of each other to get to the top. But in reality, I think that we all support each other quite a bit. And I mean, I wouldn't be where I am without the support of everybody at this company and everyone I have networked with and everything like that. So I think that's important to dispel that idea. I think the type A kind of mentality is more in the past. At least here, I don't think it exists that much, which is lovely.
There's definitely a lot of organization required in publishing, but as far as like competitive internally, I'm not seeing that anywhere that I've worked or been either.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's in the past. I do think anyone that I know in the industry would be thrilled to get a LinkedIn message with a question or asking for an informational interview or resources about working in the industry. I can say that I've been thrilled when that's happened to me. I know you've always been really open to answering questions, especially when it's me at 4:30 in the afternoon being like, I need to read this pitch out loud. I can't. My brain is chicken noodle soup. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure that everyone else you've helped has too. Yes. What are some of the skills that you think are not taken into consideration by young professionals looking to enter the industry? Maybe skills that are taken for granted by young professionals looking to work with books.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many. The number one is definitely social media. It's something that I did not realize was marketable in terms of my own skills and capabilities in a position until I really started getting into it here. And I don't know, I think it's something that it is very misconstrued in terms of what is needed to understand social media, what is needed to operate or maintain a profile. I think it's a lot of intuitive things that young people just grew up knowing just by virtue of the age that we grew up in and what was accessible to us and what was popular and still is popular among young people. I think it's kind of second nature to us at this point. Even like I catch myself sometimes scrolling on TikTok at night. It's like a leisure activity, but then I realize that I'm paying attention to certain things because I can bring it to my work on the Smith Instagram and in consulting as well, and what I tell authors. So
that's why I'm getting the 10:30 p.m. book talk from you.
Yes, I have a folder in my collections on TikTok that is work research that I'll drop in. It could be like an author did a cover reveal in a really cool way, or it could be someone talking about content ideas that I'll file away for myself later. It's things that we're picking up, whether we realize it or not, whether we're, conscious that we're taking the time to do it, because social media is designed to have us glued to our screens and on it all day and enjoying it the way that we do. It's, something that's not going away and is a fact of our life and existence. And that is valuable. Understanding that is valuable. Understanding the way that it works, the algorithms, trends, memes is all really valuable, especially in any communications, but in publishing, like the way that the market is and all of that stuff, it all contributes to how we advise and talk to authors and what we understand of the industry. And I think that that's a skill that young people just inherently have, whether you like it or not. You probably understand more about social media than the average person who is older. I think it's just a virtue of how we grew up. Other skills I think that people might undersell are really any communication, any interpersonal communication. If you've been to therapy, honestly, you know better how to communicate than people who have not been to therapy, probably. So don't discount that. Don't discount any like written communication skills that you have. That includes social media, captions, memes. That's all.
Book reviews on
communication.
Goodreads. I actually had someone who said, I don't have any examples of my writing. And I was like, do you review books? And they were like, well, yeah. And like Goodreads or Storygraph or my own Instagram. And I was like,
that's
done.
it.
That's a portfolio.
That's
is something that we will look at and be interested in.
It is.
Professionals.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So any writing, any written communication counts as communication. I mean, really everything we do counts as communication. So
personality is so huge too. It's such a passion industry, not just passion for books, but passion for authors and working with other people.
Yeah.
So when you come in, I don't know, I feel like in interview advice, I'm always hearing you got to be professional, you got to follow these specific rules and answer questions these specific ways. But in the few interviews that I've been a part of, where I've gotten to talk to interviewees and people looking to work with us, I not just at Smith, but everywhere, I've always been really interested to hear, is this personality going to be really good fit for our authors and our genres or our internal team? Like, who is this person and where do they fit? Because I am going to work so closely with you and you're going to work so closely with the rest of us. I want to make sure that we're going to be able to communicate. I want to make sure you and the authors are going to be able to communicate. And then on that same vein, I want to hear, what are you reading? What do you enjoy? And I don't want to hear The Great Gatsby and the classics that everyone thinks. Like, if you're really into new adult romance, that's going to be a huge asset to the arts and entertainment team. If you really, really, really like memoirs, especially if they're like midlife crisis memoirs or food memoirs, travel memoirs, something specific, a subgenre, we're looking for that because we might have a gap. We might be like, I actually don't have anyone that knows anything about poetry.
Yeah.
And you have an emphasis in it. Let's a concentration in it. Let's do it.
Definitely. Yeah. I think the other day, and I'll credit Andrea with saying this,
our manager,
Andrea said this, I think just yesterday, that, we benefit from having an interest in the genres we work in. If I'm promoting a book that I would read myself, I know where I would go to find it. And so it's easy for us then to know who to contact, who is going to like that kind of book. I also think you mentioned poetry, and maybe this is part of our job. And now I've learned how to do this and can spin anything. But I think having an interest in poetry, I could certainly come into an interview and say, I know how to look at things from multiple angles. I know how to present things in ways that people wouldn't necessarily think of them off the bat. And that's because I love poetry. You can kind of finagle any skill into serving you in any specific venue. If you, I mean, that in itself is a skill, being able to spin things. And that's important in publicity and book marketing for sure.
And being able to recall authors and specific titles is going to be so much help with comp title research and comparison research. We're always looking for, okay, we have a historical fantasy novel. What's another historical fantasy novel that's out in the world right now that people are interested in? And can we reach the same audiences? But if maybe I don't read that, then I might tap you and be like, what are some? And so your personal reading then comes very much in handy.
It does.
Just don't downplay what you're interested in and your passions and your interests, because that's all something that's ultimately going to help you find your place in the industry.
Definitely. I think that being upfront and transparent and asking for what I wanted helped shape my path here, certainly. When I was that first stage after intern was publicity coordinator, when I was getting ready to be in that spot, I was really vocal about wanting to be on our arts and entertainment team. And I think that is ultimately what landed me there. I think that was also true of social media. Anytime our social media managers at the time were on vacation, I was saying, please, me, I will do it. I will manage the social media while you are gone. So really like stepping into spaces before you're even asked to do it, I think is beneficial in that sense too.
Do you have any other advice for young professionals out there looking to work with books?
Yeah, the best piece of advice I got from one of my poetry professors, I think, in college was to read and write as much as humanly possible. And I'm sure this is advice you have heard too. You know, reading anything and everything is always going to be helpful. It really doesn't have to be The Great Gatsby or, like just scrolling on your Instagram and reading what things come up there, or scrolling on, I don't know, choose a news source you like, Fast Company, or, whatever. Reading a couple of articles on Substack even is beneficial. I used to pick up the Montclair's newspaper every single day and read that when I was in school. And then with writing, it doesn't have to be something that you're publishing, but just jotting down thoughts. I mean, I have it actually right here. Olivia knows I literally write everything in notebooks.
Never goes anywhere without her notebook.
I don't. I write everything down. I take notes for everything. But also, especially if you're looking to get into, even, if you're thinking you're wanting to be an editor and still wanting to pursue that, any kind of writing sample, getting published in any capacity is exciting and of course helpful. And I would encourage you to look for like any and all opportunities. Don't discount anything because it's not a big publication or like something people have heard of. Just getting the opportunity to, get your work out there, but also if you get the opportunity to work with someone who would be editing or someone who would be reviewing and giving you feedback, that's invaluable too. Also, I think networking, some advice that I would have there. LinkedIn is a very interesting place, but I think invaluable in terms of getting your foot in the door, however that, or whatever that means. I think, like we said earlier, people are really happy to connect and excited to answer questions, but also I think I found the Smith internship on LinkedIn. So people tend to actually post job listings. I also connected with people that I met at like networking events. So looking into networking events, the one really big one that I went to when I was in school was NY Wiki. They had an event for people entering the workforce, and NY Wiki is New York Women in Communication. They are a really cool organization, and if you're anywhere in the New York area vaguely, you can certainly go check them out. But I went to a big networking event and met a ton of people, and the biggest benefit was connecting with them on LinkedIn and being able to reach out to them afterwards. And then also, like, that was an event where I brought my resume and people looked at it, they took it, they told me what they liked, what they didn't like, what I could change there. And so that was also really important to hear from people actually in the industry who would be hiring people like me, what they're looking for. That all is certainly can be expensive and is not accessible for everyone, but LinkedIn is a resource that is accessible to most people. So that I think would be the bottom line for networking in terms of my advice.
And before we wrap up, I do think it's worth noting that you and I both came from an English, bookish, literary background as far as education and our internships and our previous work goes. But the publishing industry also benefits from people from other industries and backgrounds and experiences who bring all this new skills and insights in. So I know at Smith, we have a lot of people who have come from communications and PR and marketing backgrounds that don't have anything to do with books, but it's still been incredibly helpful for our team because we know books, but maybe they know media better. And then us being able to collaborate and work together is just one of a kind. Writing is a skill that's used in most professions. It's something you can call out in interviews if you're looking to go into publishing from a different career. If you have a minor or a major in, we have people here right now that majored in business, that majored in admin, that majored in marketing, PR, communications, of course, books, English, language specifically,
even design.
Design is another big one.
Design is huge for sure. I'm trying to think of others.
Yeah, just don't limit yourself thinking that if you don't have an English degree or a writing degree that you're not going to be able to work in publishing, because that's just not true. Maybe it used to be. I don't know. It's not true today anyway. No. So just be really honest with where you're coming from and the skills you bring to the table, and people are going to be interested.
For sure.
Awesome. Where can we follow you and learn more?
Yeah, you can follow me on or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Just my name, Shannon Donaghy. You'll find me. I'm connected to Smith, of course. So
Reach out for advice, mentorship.
yes, absolutely. I also have a Bookstagram if anyone wants to follow me there, and that is after_this_chapter. I post my poetry and thoughts about the books I'm reading. Very informal. And then if you want to follow the Smith Instagram and of course all the Smith socials, I'm sure Olivia is already begging you all to do that every time anyway. But I'd be remiss if I did not say that. It's also the advice I give to all my authors too. Please plug yourself. So have to plug the growth of my my baby.
Yes. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And listeners, watchers, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share with anyone else that might be interested. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast. To reach us and learn about our many services, visit smithpublicity.com or send us an email to info@smithpublicity.com.